Hello everyone, hope you're having a good day. Well, there's been a lot of talk, especially after the trial match yesterday, the pretty successful trial match against the Western Bulldogs, about our attacking capabilities. We seem to have a glut of players that can kick goals, especially with the emergence and the likely ascension to the list of Tom Edwards. We've got players like, Edwards, and we've got Langford and Draper down there, Caddy. Peter Wright can't even make the team, it seems, down there. And then you've got smaller forwards like Gresham and Carco. But what about our defence? Is it a weakness? Some say it is a weakness. I think the answer to that is both a yes and a no, depending on how you look at our defence and depending how you analyse it. And I'm going to get into that in this video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, by the way, please consider subscribing to the channel. About 90% of the people watching this have not subscribed to the channel, and it would help me out a lot. I would really appreciate it. So there's been a bit of talk that defence is Essendon's weakness, and I think that's possibly true. I think that's, it's both a yes and a no, depending on how you look at it. Last year, Essendon was the fourth worst side in the competition for points conceded. We had the fourth worst defence in the competition.
That's pretty bad.
Now, after the 2023 season, there was a lot of talk that Essendon wasn't able to stop the transition from forward 50 to defensive 50 in terms of the opposition being able to move the ball from one end of the ground to the other without us being able to stop it. And last year, we didn't improve much in that area, it has to be said. It was still an area that we struggled in. The opposition was still able to move the ball quicker, more efficiently, and more easily than what we would have preferred.
All too easy.
So before we start looking at the players that play in defence, we have to first start acknowledging that defence isn't just the back six. Defence is all over the ground. Defence is in the forward line, it's through the midfield, and it's, of course, part of your back six.
That makes sense.
And it was quite encouraging, looking at yesterday's practice match, that there was quite a bit of a focus, I thought, on forward pressure, especially in the forward 50. And if we're to become an elite defensive team, this is what we're going to need to be able to continue to do. And everybody, all the players on the field, are going to have to do that. But of course, we need to still look at the defenders themselves. Yes, it's not all up to them. I mean, you could have 10 Matthew Scarletts down there, and it's not going to mean anything if the ball is coming in easily. But still, looking at the players that we have down there, are they the team's weakness? Well, I don't think they necessarily have to be a weakness. I look at the players we have down there, and I think there's actually enough key components down there to produce a pretty good team. If you look at our key defenders, for example, down there, we have Ben Mackay, we have Zach Reid, assuming he gets on the park, and Zach Reid has had a pretty good pre-season and off-season. It looks like he's fit, which is really, really good news for him. He needs to get on the park now in his fifth season. You've got Jordan Ridley, who doesn't necessarily play as a key position player, but he can play as a key position player. He's more of a rebound defender, the general down there. We've got a young player, Lewis Hayes, who's 20 years old and 199 centimetres. And then Laverty, who can divide opinion a little bit, and a lot of people don't have him in the best 23. But we've got, 5 players really down there that can hold down, if they need to, a key position, which is actually pretty encouraging.
It's even better than I thought!
So as we go through all these players, we're going to see what they need to do to become elite players and what they need to do as defenders this year to make Essendon a top 4 defensive side. So as we look at our defenders, we're going to start with Andrew McGrath, the ever reliable Andrew McGrath. Number 1 for us. He's played 157 games, 26 years old. Number 1 draft pick, of course, after the 2016 season. Has been really a permanent fixture down there in the back line, and I think he'll continue to play down there this year. I don't think it's necessary that he stays down there. I think he's quite capable of playing in the midfield. It's not as if his defensive capabilities are elite or anything like that. I think he's down there at least in theory, for his ball use and his decision making and just his general leadership down there. And he's certainly not a weakness for us down there, but he doesn't have to stay down there. I think there's options, especially with the likelihood that Dylan Shield, who has had a very, very good preseason, is going to have a changed role and is probably going to play down there in the back line of half-back. Now, the thing about Dylan Shield, he's much more explosive than Andrew McGrath, I think. And he's really got that good ball use ability, and I think he could really be a bit of an asset down there on the half-back line for us. The only question mark I have over Dylan Shield down there is his defensive capability. All right, he's never really been known for the defensive side of his game. But if he can be a bit of a general down there, a little bit like McGrath, then we should be able to set up quite a lot of attacks off the half-back line through his good ball use. Jackson Prier is the other player down there who is of a smaller stature, recruited from the Brisbane Lions to bolster the defensive lineup. He probably won't play every game, but I would expect him to play 10 to 15 games. He's got a pretty good ability to read the play down there and deliver precise kicks. It's very important to be a very good kick down there. That's really why we've recruited him. That makes him a valuable asset. I guess that's one criticism perhaps of McGrath. It's not that he's a terrible kick in a technical sense, but he can tend to turn the ball over a little bit. Jackson Prier is actually a very good user of the football. I don't know a hell of a lot about the defensive side of his game. If he played at the Brisbane Lions, you'd think he would be pretty accomplished in that area. But really, we've recruited him for his precise kicking. And I think he's going to be quite an important player down there for us this year. Okay, so have a look at the key defensive posts. Ben Mackay, who is pretty much recovered from his ankle surgery and will probably be right to go against Geelong next week and should be right to start the season. It's not unreasonable to say that he should be better this year than he was last year. He was pretty good last year at the start of the season. He fell away a little bit. I think he was carrying an injury towards the second half of the season. He wasn't as effective in the second half of last season as what he was in the first. But at his age and in the second year in a new system, at a new club, you should really be better. So I think there's every reason to suggest should be better. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation. He was pretty good last year, but it's not unreasonable to suggest that at his age, second year in a new club, we've been pretty conservative with getting his ankle right, so he'll be ready to go and should be fully fit when the season starts. Every reason to suggest that he should be better than what he was last year. His compatriot, Zach Reid, who should hold down the other key defensive post, obviously he's going to be better than he was last year because he didn't play. And let's face it, he's barely played in 4 years, mainly due to injuries, not talent. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, he still has to prove himself. But once again, if you look at both Mackay and Zach Reid, it's not unreasonable to suggest that both of those, particularly Reid, should be improved players. I mean, Reid was picked as a top 10 draft pick. Obviously, he's got talent. You're not picked in the top 10 unless you've got talent. Doesn't always work out with these players, but we know he can play. He was pretty solid in the practice game against the Western Bulldogs yesterday. His positioning was good. He got his hands to quite a few balls. I thought that was a pretty good sign, and I rate him as a player. And if you just look at how those players should go this year compared to last year, they are players, Zach Reid in particular, that should improve. And if they improve, then our defensive structure should improve. And then, of course, you've got Lewis Hayes down there, who probably won't play, but he's 199 centimetres. He's recruited as a backman. He is, probably you'd think more than capable of at least getting into the senior team this year. I don't know if he will play football, but he's an option down there. You've got Jason Laverty, who divides opinion. I'm not quite sure whether he's in the best 23. I don't think he will improve. I don't think he, as a player, is necessarily going to get any better. Hayes, of course, will get better. Hayes is just a 20-year-old. He will be better than what he was. You've got Jordan Ridley, who spent at least the first part of the season injured. And even when he came back, he probably wasn't at 100% for the whole year. And we saw when he came back against Richmond how fantastic he was. He was best on ground in his first game back last year. And he really is the general down there. He can play as an intercept defender, and he doesn't necessarily need to improve, but obviously given the fact that he missed the first portion of last season, there's every reason to suggest that should he play most games, not guaranteed of course, that once again, that should be an improvement to the team based on last year's output.
Damn, he's good.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that between Hayes, who may not play, Ridley, Mackay and Reid, they should all produce a higher output than what they did last year. I don't think that's an unfair assumption or prediction. I don't think it's being sort of ridiculously glass half full. I mean, Ridley he had that minor hamstring strain, but he'll be right to play, we think, against Geelong next week. So his preparation has been mostly uninterrupted. So really, this doesn't have to be a weakness for us. Then we've got players like Angus Clark, who is a bit of a Mason Redman type player. He was probably well known in the off-season for winning the time trial, which is always a good sign, a young player to sort of outdo the senior players in a particular aspect of the training regimen. He's a really, he can run all day. He's about 188 centimetres and he's sort of a versatile, not necessarily a key position defender, but a versatile sort of running player out of defence. And it'd be good to see him get a game. Archie Roberts down there, small player, halfback flanker type player. Once again, played the 4 or 5 games last year. Not unreasonable to suggest that his output should improve on what it was last year. He's a year older, another year into the system. So, really, I think most of the players down there should be better players than what they were last year. That's not always the case at clubs. But most of the players, their age profile and their injury status last year and their natural improvement should see them be better players. Even Mason Redman, who is not at the stage of his career where he's getting better, actually had a pretty poor season last year.
Because he's a ringer.
I think some were suggesting it was because he signed a contract and he got a bit comfortable. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think there is more game plan related reasons why that is. So Mason Redman did say himself on an interview on the Essendon Football Club website that his output, or there was a little bit of talk outside the club that his output was a little bit down on last year, specifically in regards to his running game out of halfback and setting up more attacking plays. And he said he wants to get a little bit better in that regard and improve. So he's aware of that. And so once again, he's another player that really, given that he was a little bit down last year, it's reasonable to think, especially that he's aware of the fact that he had a little bit of a down season last year, he's aware of this and he should improve. So if you look at our defensive players, really, McGrath probably will stay at the same level that he was last year. Shield, didn't play last year, so anything he does is going to be an asset, and I think he's going to be pretty good off half-back. Lewis Hayes, if he plays, is obviously going to be an improvement because he's hasn't played for the club and he's a pretty good prospect. Jackson Prier is an addition to the club. Mason Redman should improve on last year. Zach Reid obviously has not got a clear run at it with injuries. Assuming he does, he will improve. Laverty is probably at the same level. Angus Clark, young player, there's an improvement graph there for him. Ben Mackay, second year, should get better. Ridley probably at the same level, but given that he missed a lot of last year with injury, his output should be better than last year. And Archie Roberts' output should be better than last year. So I'm actually more optimistic with our defence than most other people. I don't think it necessarily has to be a weakness for us at all. But as I stated earlier in the video, it's fine to talk about those players, but it's not just about those players. It's about the team defence all over the ground. Those players, we have to make the job as easy as possible for our defenders to make sure the ball's not getting in there easily. And if we can fix that part of the game, and it was a little bit better last year, but it still wasn't quite up to scratch. And I think if we can show the kind of forward pressure that looked to be on display in the match against the Bulldogs, which was no doubt has been a key focus of the team in the off-season, there's no reason to think that with the natural improvement of most of the defenders that we have on the list, and there is natural improvement in most of those players, there's no reason why the club can't improve the defensive part of the game. What do you guys think? Do you think our defence is a weakness? I know it's probably thought of as a weakness, but I don't think it necessarily has to be. I think we've got the components there. We've got the key position players. We've got the running players out of defence, the Redmonds, the Shields, the McGraths, these sort of players. You've got players like Angus Clark, Archie Roberts. Then, of course, Jordan Ridley, the do-it-all, the key position, also intercept general down there. We've got the structure there. We haven't necessarily got any type of player that we're lacking. We have the key defenders. We have the reasonable ball users down there, which is why we recruited Jackson Prier. So I think our defence actually has quite a lot of upside in it. Can we get to a top 4 defence? Well, let's see. That's what we need to aspire to be. I'm taking a glass half full approach this pre-season. I was pretty impressed with what I saw in the pre-season match yesterday. Kept the Bulldogs to only 57 points. Yes, I know they weren't at full strength, but you keep a team to 57 points, it's a positive. What do you guys think? Hope you're all having a very, very good summer so far and a happy February. And as always, have a great day.